4 years ago, many people couldn't imagine who the small young man carrying the flag was. Others who knew him thought it was a nice gesture toward a young man who had overcome a severe illness to make the team. But Scott Hamilton had bigger ambitions, and the next year became champion of the world. Axel, half loop, double toe loop. Yes, Scott Hamilton won the World Championship at Hartford and went on to win it twice more the next 2 years. Then Salt Lake City. Just last month at the U.S. National Championship, he became, for the 4th time, American champion. And he was really on that night. Watch him. Rapport with the crowd. Time for the marks, a 6, a perfect mark from the judge. He loves everything about it. Look at him enjoy the 5.9. There's another 6, and another 6, and another 6. It was believed to have been the most perfect marks ever received in the U.S. National Championship, which brings us up to date until this very day when he began his bid in Sarajevo. 3 phases. First, the compulsory figures. Here's Dick Button.
At 7 o'clock this morning, half of Sarajevo was still asleep. But for the men who were taking part in the figure skating championships here at the Winter Olympic Games, well, everyone was wide awake because the competition was beginning here in the Skandaria ice rink. Hello, everybody. I'm Dick Button, and it was the school figures that took place this morning. Now, the school figures are the least publicized, the hardest to understand, the most difficult to see, and therefore the most mysterious of all aspects of the figure skating competition. But nevertheless, they're very important. And we asked Scott Hamilton why.
It's 30% of the competition, and what it basically does is it sets you up for the free skating because it starts a seeding type of thing. And it's 3 figures that have been chosen already, and we're working on them now on all 40 minutes a day of practice. And the first one is an inside rocker, and it's a 3-lobe figure, all totally on an inside edge. And the second one is a double 3. It's 2 circles with 4 changes of direction, and the last one is a 3-lobe figure, 3 circles, the loop, which is much smaller.
A lot of the skaters don't like the compulsory figures, and that's because they're tedious, they're time-consuming, they're very, very difficult, and most important of all, they don't have any of the high-flying freedom and the looseness of free skating. But they are a part of the competition, and in fact, they're an integral part of it. And that's because the skating of school figures goes back a very long way, to the very beginning of the sport. In fact, it gave the sport its name. Many people felt then, and still do, that figures are an art form. The art of skating today means free skating, but really the first skating artists were the skaters of the 19th century. Instead of jumping and spinning, they etched figures in the ice. Ever since man first stepped on the ice, he noticed he left a tracing. And over time, these simple lines evolved into wonderfully extravagant figures, an art form in themselves. In the 20s, in St. Moritz, Gillis Grafstrom demonstrated these intricate and elaborate designs. It was the custom for the skaters to first illustrate their patterns on paper before carving them into the ice. Competitions were held, and the skater who invented the most creative figure won. Despite the beauty and uniqueness of these special figures, they ultimately disappeared in the early 1900s, symbols of a bygone age. In their place are 41 compulsory figures, all variations on this figure, the basic simple figure 8. Instead of inventing their own designs, skaters must master the technique of these predetermined figures. For the Olympic, 6 figures must be practiced, but on the day of competition, only 3 are chosen. It's still a very difficult and precise discipline, and Scott Hamilton demonstrates a paragraph bracket as he would do it in competition. First, he steps onto a clean sheet of ice. There are no markings to guide him. He looks around carefully, mapping out where the figure will lay, raising his arms to indicate to the judges where the circles will fall. Remember, this is a 2-circle figure with a turn at the top of each circle. and they must be exactly placed. He pushes off, makes the turn at the top, you can hear the sound of it, and completes the first circle, changing of his edge and riding into the second circle, at the top of which must be the second turn. And remember, it must be directly opposite the first turn. He has to keep his speed and his flow going. And as he completes the first tracing, he now steps off on an inside edge this time to make the second print. This is called a tracing, and it must be exact. Look at how he must twist and turn in order to keep his eye over the edge so that he can skate exactly onto the first print. Everything must work in sync here, and he must be steady. He can't have any wiggles or wobbles. In the third tracing, Scott goes back to the right foot. Once again, he traces the print exactly. The precision must be extraordinary. The judges not only inspect the print itself, they also mark him on how he skates the figure, his carriage, his flow, his smoothness, the steadiness of the edge, the lean of the body. Here he's about to start the last tracing. Look at the lean on the inside edge. And here the turn, very quick and precise. At this point, he simply cannot let down on his concentration, but must keep tracing, maintain the speed, and keep the turns complete and clean. In the silence of the ring, he finishes the figure. Now, before we inspect the print, like the judges would, let's have a look in slow motion at the second tracing. And this is one of the trickiest, because Scott not only has to do the figure correctly, but he has also to skate over or trace the first print. In addition, he must also look for any mistakes he may have made on the first tracing and correct them. You see, good tracings can help your score, except if you trace a mistake, a bulge in the circle, a turn in the wrong place. It tells the judges that you think tracing is more important than accuracy, but to them, accuracy is the top priority. So Scott has to constantly think one step ahead and judge the figure himself as he skates it. Judges have also been known to get down on their hands and knees to inspect the turns, to see whether they're clean and whether they're well traced. These brackets of Scott's are excellent. The turn, the edges going into them, and the edges coming out are symmetrical and strong and quite well traced. In general, this is an excellent figure. It's important also to inspect the overall aspect of the figure. Are both circles equal, and are they round? It's a little bit deceiving from this angle, but indeed they are.
Here was Scott in the actual competition. Despite the many hours practicing the paragraph bracket, it wasn't one of the figures chosen. The first figure, we see it here, was the rocker. You could see how it should look on the left. A three-lobed figure with turns connecting each of the three circles. There's the first turn, and this is the far circle. Now, there's no blue ice here as we had in our demonstration. And on this blank sheet of white ice, it's far more difficult for Scott to see the print. Here he is pushing off on the back inside edge to complete the middle circle, the turn right there, right connecting the starting edge, and this, the near circle. Now, it looks as though Scott did this very well. His position good, his toe could have been a little more pointed, but really with the exacting, demanding nature of these figures, nobody cares too much about that. Here he is, retracing. Look at him, look over his left shoulder so that he can keep on that line on the print exactly. Scott took command right from the very start with this figure, winning it. It was an unexpected result for all who were watching. And coming up, you'll see how he fared in the remaining two figures.
Tonight's coverage of the 14th Winter Olympic Games
was Jean-Christophe Simon of France. Now, he's been the best at the school figures over the past 3 years, winning them at every European and World Championship. He's doing the second figure, the paragraph double three. You see it there, right there on the left. Now, he's raising his arms to show the direction in which he is going to lay the figure out in front of the judges, and there he starts. Remember, it's a two-lobed figure, two circles with two turns in each circle. Now, Scott had never beaten Simon in the figures, and going into this figure, Simon was in second place, and when he didn't live up to his usual good standard, well, the margin between the two men was increased. Going into the final figure, Scott had to keep up his standard of excellence if he was going to maintain his lead. And in this figure, the back change loop, he did just that. See once again how neat the tracings are, how precisely he did the final figure. It looks like a winner. But Christophe still had to skate the final figure. And remember, any skater can pull up, even on the last figure, and take the lead. Here you could see Simon as he traced that back change loop. Look at those circles. From this angle, you can see a very well-formed figure. How good was it? It was a first-rate one. But not good enough to take the lead. So Scott won the figures, followed by Simone and Rudy Cherney of West Germany. Brian Boitano and Mark Cockrell of the U.S. were 8th and 18th.
The figure part of the competition, it's over. The results are in, and the interesting thing is that Scott Hamilton has not only won the compulsory figures, but he won every single one of those figures. What do you think, champ?
Mere words cannot express the elation I went through today on those figures. No, it went tremendous. I can't even tell you. It's always been Christophe. Christophe. I can never beat him, and he's great. And it's been something that I've been shooting for a couple years. I just want to beat Christophe in one figure, maybe two. But when I beat him today in all three, oh, that's huge. I had goosebumps.
Well, for 3 years he defeated you. What made the big change?
I think it's because I looked at him and I thought, this is my competition, and I knew what his figures were like. I knew what he was capable of doing, and I just wanted to improve my figures to at least be as good as his. I figured if I was going to be second, I'm going to make him scrap for first, and it worked out. I wasn't that nervous today. I was thinking more about doing good figures to compete with him than I was thinking about messing up figures, which is something that you usually think about.
So you saw yourself in the chasing position rather than in the chased as far as the school figures were?
Yes, and I like it a lot better.
It's easier, isn't it?
Now I'm first and I don't have anybody to chase, but that's fine. I like it here, and hopefully the short and the long will work out.
Well, we're going to see that short program tomorrow night. One question, are you going to be ready for it?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Well, I can tell you one thing, we'll be ready.